Have you ever found yourself in this situation where you joke around and tease your loved one without realizing it might hurt them? That was me, until everything changed on what seemed like an ordinary evening. My story began during a neighborhood gathering. We were all in a backyard, holding cheap glasses of wine, sharing random stories. I didn't think much of it when the conversation shifted to my husband, Mark. He's a bit shy, often makes jokes no one understands, and sometimes does things clumsily. Naturally, I've laughed at him more times than I can count. But that night, something shifted. When the phone rang, my heart pounded, each beat echoing in the quiet space. But it rang only once, and then went silent. He didn't answer. That sinking feeling was unbearable, as if he had truly walked away, with no way back. I put the phone down, feeling like I was falling into a deep, dark hole. The house suddenly felt so empty, and I could sense every crack in my own mind. It was a foggy, disorienting feeling, like I didn't even recognize myself anymore. How had I let it get this far? How could I have hurt the person I love most with thoughtless words? I stepped out of the house without a plan, just needing to escape the suffocating air. I found myself at a nearby coffee shop where Mark and I used to spend weekends together. The place was almost empty, with just a few scattered customers. But I couldn't stop imagining Mark sitting here alone, just like in the picture Karen had sent me. The thought made my chest ache. I ordered a black coffee, sat at our usual corner, and looked around. Every table, every corner, every detail brought back memories of us. The rich aroma of coffee couldn't mask the emptiness inside me. I wondered, was he sitting here now, thinking about me, about us? Or had he truly decided to walk away from it all? The entire afternoon slipped by in silence. I didn't call him again. I knew it wasn't the right time, not in this state of mind. But part of me still hoped, still wished he wouldn't let things end like this. By late afternoon, as I was getting ready to leave, my phone buzzed again. My heart raced. I glanced at the screen and saw Mark's name. My eyes lit up, and I answered immediately. "Mark!" My voice cracked, unable to hide the tension. His voice on the other end was deep and cold. "Claire, we need to talk." It felt like my world was crumbling. He's not the kind of person who gives up easily. That much I knew. But how long had he been silent? He hadn't texted, hadn't called. I felt like this wasn't just about last night's jokes at the party. This was something deeper, more profound. We had ignored too much for too long. "I'm sorry, Mark," I said, my voice breaking. I didn't think it would affect you like that." He let out a tired sigh. "You're right, you didn't think. Claire, you have no idea how it feels to be made into a joke in front of everyone. You don't know how hard I've tried to keep things from falling apart." There was a long silence. I could hear the exhaustion in his voice, as if he had no energy left to argue. "Mark," I began, but I didn't know what to say next. Finally, he spoke softly. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, Claire. Love isn't a joke. Every day, I feel like I'm losing myself, giving up too much. I need time to think things through." I was speechless. Every word seemed meaningless in that moment. "Can you come home?" I asked, my voice trembling, lacking confidence. I wanted to hold on, but I knew I didn't have the right to ask anymore. He was silent for a long time before finally replying. "I don't know, Claire. Sometimes, love doesn't mean staying together forever. Maybe we need space to truly understand each other." "Then I'll wait," I said, even though I felt hollow inside. "I'll wait until you're ready to come back." Mark didn't respond right away. But before hanging up, he said something softly, almost as if it was a reminder for both of us. "Don't wait for me, Claire. Don't let your love be trapped in regret." Do you have any advice for me? If you were in my shoes, what would you do when you realize your relationship is on the brink of falling apart over seemingly small things? How do you change when it feels like it's already too late? Can I still fix the mistakes I've made? The next day, I woke up feeling completely different. The house was silent. No more breakfast chatter with Mark. No more casual words as he got ready to leave. It felt like a part of my life had come to a halt. I sat on the sofa, staring into the empty space, as questions swirled endlessly in my mind. Why did I let things go so far? Sometimes, the things we do in thoughtless moments can create cracks that are impossible to mend. I kept replaying the look in Mark's eyes last night, eyes filled with disappointment and sadness. That image haunted me, reminding me that some things can't be undone once they're lost. While tidying up the house, sorting through our things, I stumbled upon an old book we used to read together when we first got married. It was a book we both loved, filled with quotes and lessons about love and sustaining relationships. I opened it, and my eyes landed on a passage. Love is not a static state. It is a process of continuous growth. And sometimes that process must begin within yourself. That line hit me like a cold splash of water, waking me up and pulling me back to reality. Love isn't just about the sweet moments. It's about self-awareness, growth, and learning to understand and change. I decided that instead of wallowing in regret, I needed to take action to make things right. But I also knew that repairing a relationship isn't something that happens overnight. If Mark needed time, I would respect that. That day, I went out and visited places I used to go when I needed clarity. I went to the nearby park, where the wide open space helped me reflect on what truly mattered in life. Sitting under a tree, I began to write a letter to Mark. It wasn't an apology or a promise. It was an honest sharing from the depths of my heart about what I had realized, about my mistakes, and about the growth I was striving for. Mark, I understand that what's happened can't be undone overnight. I was wrong, and I can't erase the things I said. But I want you to know that I'm learning to change, learning to see things more deeply. Love isn't just about being together. It's also about respect and understanding. I hope that no matter how different we may be, I can come to understand you better. And more importantly, I want to better understand myself. When I finished the letter, I knew I couldn't just keep these thoughts in my head. I had to send it, but I also realized that sending it was only the first step. More important than words were the actions I needed to take to prove them true. I didn't send the letter immediately. I left it there, letting my emotions settle. Each day, I would look at it, reread it, and remind myself that there's no way to undo the past, but I could work to make the future better. I wasn't waiting for a miracle. I knew that only I could change my life. Time passed. I didn't call Mark. I didn't text him. Instead, I focused on the little things in life I had overlooked for so long. I started taking yoga classes, working on personal growth, and learning how to face my emotions instead of avoiding them. Every morning, I would read the letter I wrote to Mark, reminding myself that while I couldn't control everything, I could control how I responded to it. Then, one evening while I was home alone, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw Mark's name. My heart raced. This time, I didn't rush to answer. I took a deep breath, and then I pressed accept. His voice on the other end was soft, but I could hear the change in his tone. Claire, I read your letter, and I want to say, I understand. I'm not promising to come back right away, but I want us to try again. We've both made mistakes, and I can't deny that I've been stubborn too. I need time, but I'm willing to try. I felt a glimmer of light in my heart. Not because we would instantly reconcile, but because we had started to understand each other better. The silence and space had given us both the time to reflect and reevaluate everything. Maybe love isn't a destination, it's a journey. A journey we have to walk together, learning, forgiving, and growing along the way. Mark, I said, my voice gentle but filled with hope. We're going to be okay, aren't we? He paused for a moment, then replied, yes, Claire, we're going to be okay. When I put my phone down, a strange feeling washed over me. It wasn't the relief or peace I had hoped for, but rather a rising anxiety. I wondered if Mark was truly ready to face what I had done, the things I'd said, the hurt I'd caused him. Could we really move past all the cracks I had created? And when he replied, I realized that our marriage wasn't just a sad story. It was a battle between two people who wanted to be loved, who wanted to be understood. This battle wasn't only against the world, but also within ourselves, a fight we both needed to win. The next day, Mark returned, not with an apology, but with silence. He walked into the living room, just as quietly as he had left. His face didn't soften, but it wasn't cold either. He looked at me intently, as though he was trying to read every line on my face. I didn't say a word. I just stood up and walked toward him. We faced each other, and though no words were spoken, Our eyes said everything. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Finally, I sighed and broke the silence. Mark, I'm not just the wife who hurt you. I'm also someone who lost herself along the way. I focused too much on trivial things, on what didn't matter, and in doing so, I hurt you. I made you the target of my jokes, and I can't forgive myself for that. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he quietly sat down on the sofa. We sat there together, the space between us as wide as a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. But after a long silence, Mark finally spoke. Claire, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be you. But if you can't see us, see me, with your whole heart, then I don't know how we can go on. His words felt like a lesson in love, a plea, almost, that urged me to truly see our relationship for what it was. Everything felt like it was spinning. My eyes began to sting. It wasn't just regret. It was the deep realization that I had overlooked the most important things in our relationship. We had both hurt each other, and it was time to repair what had been broken. Mark looked at me, his eyes filled with sadness. Claire, I've always tried to do everything right so we could be okay. But when I look into your eyes, I don't see trust. I don't see love. I see disappointment, anger, and sometimes even contempt. And I can't live in a relationship like that. His words hit me like a blow to the heart. I didn't know what to do, or if anything could still be saved. But I knew that if we were to continue, I had to face the truth. I couldn't just sit there and wait for things to change on their own. This marriage wasn't a game. It required sacrifice, patience, and most importantly, forgiveness. With all the strength I could muster, I moved closer to him. My hands were trembling, but I was determined. Mark, I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I promise to change starting now. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild the trust and love we've lost. Mark sat in silence, watching me as if weighing every word I said. After a long pause, he stood up, and I felt a shift in the air. He placed a hand on my shoulder, gentle but firm. Don't promise me big things. Just promise me one. No more jokes at our expense. We won't let the little things tear us apart. We'll fight, not just for love, but for mutual respect. In that moment, I didn't need grand declarations. I just needed him to stay. I just needed the truth that we could still find each other again. And I understood then that real love isn't about beautiful words or lofty promises. It's about the smallest actions, the inner changes, the daily choices we make to hold our relationship together. Our marriage didn't go back to what it used to be, but it became something stronger, something deeper. We didn't just love each other anymore. We respected each other, understood each other, and cared for each other's feelings in a genuine way. And that was the turning point we had crossed together. Love isn't just an emotion. It's a journey where every day is an opportunity to learn, to forgive, and to love each other even more. After those words, Mark and I couldn't go back to the way things were, but I didn't feel any regret. Life isn't a fairy tale that always ends with a sweet conclusion, but we had weathered the storm, and that was what mattered most. From then on, we no longer looked at each other with judgment. No more hurtful jokes or meaningless words. Every conversation, whether about something trivial or profound, became more meaningful than ever. We learned to listen and understand each other, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. As time passed, I found myself changing. I was no longer the woman who easily fell into superficial small talk, where dishonesty and empty jokes filled the air. I started seeing things differently, viewing life as an opportunity to grow and improve each day. Mark changed too. He became a man I didn't just love, but respected. He was no longer the clumsy man I once saw, but someone strong, someone who could rise above his mistakes. Through it all, we didn't just heal our wounds. We learned to love each other in the truest sense, to love from the simplest things, with sincerity and respect. Gone were the moments of shallow laughter at backyard parties. Instead, we learned to share genuine stories with each other. Sometimes about the smallest things, like a new day, a new book, or even just how much effort we both put into getting through a single day. One morning, as I was making coffee, Mark walked into the kitchen, looking at me with a soft smile. He placed a hand on my shoulder and said, I'm truly grateful we didn't give up. We made it through everything, not because we're perfect, but because we kept trying. And in that moment, I understood one thing. Love isn't about perfection. It's about perseverance, about the relentless effort to nurture the relationship, to understand and love each other in the deepest way. Looking back, I can't deny that our marriage went through many challenges, some of which seemed impossible to overcome. But it was precisely those challenges that made us stronger, more mature, and more loving. Now, I realize that every argument, every conflict, every moment of hurt was an opportunity for us to learn, to become better versions of ourselves and of this relationship. There are days when we sit together in silence, saying nothing, but we don't need to. A simple look, a faint smile, and we understand each other more deeply than ever before. That is the love I had been searching for, not in sweet words or perfect moments, but in sincerity, understanding, and accepting each other with all our flaws. And throughout the days that followed, I came to understand that real love is an unending journey. Each day is a lesson, every challenge an opportunity for us to build and strengthen this bond. Nothing is perfect, but as long as we walk this path together, weathering every storm, we will always find light at the end of the road. In the end, I realized that in a marriage, perfection isn't the goal. It's simply having each other. That is the greatest blessing of all. A month later, things seemed to have gradually returned to normal, but I couldn't deny that I had changed. The relationship between Mark and me had undergone a profound transformation. We were no longer just two people living under the same roof, but true friends, real companions, ready to share every joy and sorrow, with no distance between us. That day, Mark came home later than usual, holding a book in his hand and wearing an expression I hadn't seen before. It was a gentle smile, not the kind of polite smile he used to have, but one of peace and understanding. He sat down next to me, opened the book, and said, this book has changed the way I see life. It talks about how to build a real relationship, not just through words, but through actions, through sharing and empathy. I looked at the book in his hand, wondering if we had truly overcome all the challenges to arrive at this point. There had certainly been moments when we almost couldn't save what we had, but now everything felt different. Mark was no longer the man I once thought of as clumsy or incapable. He was growing, striving not only for personal fulfillment, but also for the betterment of our relationship. We began spending evenings sharing books, favorite movies, and even plans for the future. Not grand or lofty goals, but simple things. Traveling together, trying new foods, or just spending time listening to each other after a long day. I realized that life doesn't have to be perfect, but if you can share those ordinary moments with the person you love, that's already something extraordinary. One morning, after we had tidied up the house and prepared breakfast together, Mark suddenly made a suggestion that caught me off guard. Claire, I think we should take a communication class. Maybe it'll help us understand each other better, especially during stressful times. His suggestion made me reflect on everything we had been through. It wasn't that we didn't know how to communicate, but that we had overlooked the deeper emotions, failing to recognize the cracks forming in our relationship. Mark didn't just recognize that. He actively sought to improve it, to rebuild a solid foundation for our marriage alongside me. A few weeks later, we started attending the class. Lessons on communication, on expressing emotions, and most importantly, on respecting and understanding one another brought us even closer. Gone were the nights of arguments and exhaustion. Instead, we spent our evenings sitting together, sharing thoughtful conversations, and calmly finding solutions to our problems. Through this process, I came to understand something I hadn't deeply considered before. Relationships aren't always easy, but they are always worth the effort you put into them. Sometimes, all it takes is a change in perspective, a willingness to face challenges differently, and you can find harmony in conflicts that once seemed impossible to resolve. The relationship between Mark and me isn't perfect, but now we no longer worry about whether we can overcome obstacles. We've learned to respect each other, to cherish what we've built over the years. Most importantly, we've rediscovered true love. Not a flawless love, but a love nurtured, built, and preserved together every single day. Every time I look into Mark's eyes, I see the peace and connection we've worked so hard to create. It's the kind of love I want to continue. Not because it's easy, but because it's a commitment, an unwavering bond, no matter what comes our way. We've faced challenges together, and that is the most wonderful thing about life. In the end, our story didn't just stop at the challenges or difficult moments. It became a long journey of rediscovering ourselves and finding our way back to each other. Mark made the decision to change, and his choices didn't just transform our relationship. They also made me realize that sometimes small changes can be the stepping stones to something greater in life. That night, as we sat next to each other, gazing out the window and talking about everything we'd been through, I came to an important realization. Every decision, no matter how big or small, has the power to change a life. So, what about you? What do you think of Mark's decisions? Can we change to renew ourselves and the relationships in our lives? Or are we forever bound by old habits? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them with us in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to our channel to explore more valuable lessons about life and love. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Glowing Star,